The flames roared through the wooden farmhouse in the dead of night, leaving 18-year-old Willow Carter with nothing but scars that would forever mark her body and her soul. It was June of 1876, a hot summer in the Colorado Territory that would forever change her life. Willow stood at the edge of her brother's property outside Denver, staring at the modest homestead with apprehension. 3 years had passed since the fire that claimed their parents and left her scarred along her right arm, shoulder, and part of her neck. 3 years since she'd been sent east to an aunt who promised to fix her up proper, though no amount of high-neck dresses could hide what she truly was damaged goods, as her aunt had not so subtly reminded her. "Well, look what the train dragged in," came a familiar voice. Willow turned to face her older brother, Grant Carter. At 28, he had the same sandy brown hair as she did, but time and bitterness had hardened his features. The telegram he'd sent after their aunt's passing had been perfunctory: "Come back. No place for you in Boston now." "Hello, Grant," she replied, clutching her small carpet bag tighter. "I appreciate you taking me in." His eyes traveled to where her dress sleeve covered her scarred arm, and his lip curled slightly. "Not much choice, is there? Family obligation, and all that. Martha's inside. She's expecting, so don't go giving her any frights with. You know." Willow felt the familiar sting of shame. She nodded, following him inside where she met her sister-in-law, a small, pinched woman whose eyes widened at the sight of the new arrival. "You'll be helping with the housework and the cooking," Grant informed her over a silent dinner that evening. "And when harvest comes, you'll help in the fields too. Martha can't be exerting herself in her condition." "Of course," Willow agreed softly. She'd known coming here wouldn't be easy, but she hadn't expected the coldness that radiated from her only remaining family. The next morning, Willow rose before dawn to begin her chores. The summer heat was already building as she hung laundry on the line behind the house. She had rolled up her sleeves in the privacy of the yard, allowing her scarred skin some relief from the heavy fabric. "For heaven's sake, Willow." Martha's shocked voice came from the back porch. "Cover yourself. What if someone from town rides by?" Grant appeared behind his wife, his face darkening at the sight of Willow's exposed arms. "Still haven't learned any sense, have you? Those marks are ugly as sin. No wonder Aunt Gertrude couldn't find you a husband back east." Willow's cheeks burned hotter than the sun overhead as she hastily pushed her sleeves down.
"I'm sorry."
"I didn't think anyone would see." "That's your problem," Grant snapped. "You never think." That night, Willow lay on her small bed in the storeroom they'd cleared for her, fighting back tears. She longed for kindness, for acceptance, for someone who could look at her and see more than her scars. 2 weeks passed in much the same fashion. Willow worked from dawn till dusk, keeping her scars carefully hidden, speaking only when spoken to. Grant made little effort to hide his disgust whenever he caught a glimpse of her marred skin, and Martha followed his lead, treating Willow more like an unfortunate obligation than family. The morning of the town's midsummer festival arrived, and Grant surprised Willow by announcing she would accompany them. "People have been asking about you," he explained gruffly. "Best to show your face and get the curiosity over with. But wear your heaviest shawl. No need to alarm the townsfolk." The festival was being held in the center of the small town, with stalls selling food and goods, music playing, and children running about. Willow had never felt more out of place in her high-necked dress and thick shawl despite the sweltering heat. "I'm going to speak with the Hendersons about their wheat prices," Grant told her after they arrived. "Stay with Martha, and don't wander off." Willow nodded obediently, but within an hour, Martha had found a group of women to gossip with, leaving Willow standing awkwardly alone. The heat was becoming unbearable under her shawl, and she quietly slipped away toward a large oak tree at the edge of the gathering, seeking some relief in its shade. She was so focused on finding a moment's peace that she didn't notice the man approaching until his horse whinnied right beside her, causing her to jump. "Pardon me, madam," came a deep voice. "Didn't mean to startle you." Willow looked up into the bluest eyes she'd ever seen. They belonged to a young man perhaps a few years older than herself, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck beneath his cowboy hat. His expression was kind, curious. "No harm done," she managed to reply, tightening her shawl around her shoulders despite the heat. "You look like you could use some water," he observed, dismounting with fluid grace. "It's too hot for all those layers." He offered a canteen. "I'm fine, thank you," she said, though her parched throat betrayed her. He smiled, and something in Willow's chest tightened.
"I'm Vic Xavier."
"Most folks call me Vic. I work at the Harrison Ranch just outside town." "Willow Carter," she replied hesitantly. I'm staying with my brother Grant." Recognition flashed across his face. "Carter's place, north of town? I delivered some horses there last month." He studied her face. "Didn't know he had a sister." "I've been away, back east." Before their conversation could continue, Grant's voice rang out. "Willow, what are you doing?" Willow turned to see her brother striding toward them, his face set in a scowl. Martha trailed behind him, looking scandalized. "Just catching some shade, Grant," Willow explained. Grant's eyes narrowed as they landed on Victor. "Xavier. Didn't expect to see you here." "Mr. Carter." Victor nodded politely. "Just making your sister's acquaintance." "Well, we're leaving," Grant announced, taking Willow's arm roughly. "My wife isn't feeling well in this heat." As Grant pulled her away, Willow glanced back to see Victor watching them, a slight frown creasing his brow. "What were you thinking?" Grant hissed once they were in their wagon heading home. "Talking to Xavier of all people? What's wrong with him?" Willow asked, confused. "Troublemaker. Got fired from 3 ranches before Harrison took him on. Besides, men like him only want one thing from a woman, and when they see what's under that shawl, they'd run for the hills anyway." Martha nodded in agreement. "You should be grateful your brother is looking out for you, Willow. Not many would take in someone with your condition." Willow said nothing, but something inside her that had been dormant for years flickered to life, a small, defiant flame. The next morning, Grant informed Willow that she would need to ride into town for supplies while he and Martha attended to business at the bank. "You remember how to ride, I expect?" he asked, gesturing to an older mare in the corral. "Yes," Willow replied, surprised at being trusted with this task.
"Good.
Here's the list. Don't dawdle, and keep yourself covered." Willow nodded, but as soon as Grant and Martha's wagon disappeared down the road, she removed her heavy shawl, leaving just her long-sleeved dress. Even that small act of rebellion made her heart race. The ride to town was pleasant, the morning still cool enough to be comfortable. Willow found herself enjoying the freedom, the wind in her hair, the scenery of the rugged Colorado landscape. It had been too long since she'd been allowed such independence. She tethered her horse outside the general store and stepped inside, list in hand. The shopkeeper, an elderly man with spectacles, greeted her warmly. "You must be Grant Carter's sister," he said. "Heard you were back. Welcome to Carson Creek." "Thank you," Willow replied, touched by the simple kindness. She was selecting the items on her list when the bell above the door jingled, and a familiar voice called out a greeting to the shopkeeper. Willow turned to see Victor Xavier removing his hat as he entered, his eyes finding hers immediately. "Miss Carter," he said with a smile that reached those blue eyes. "Good to see you again." Willow felt her cheeks warm. "Mr. Xavier. Good morning. Please call me Vic." He moved closer, lowering his voice. "Your brother not with you today?" "No. He had business in town." She didn't know why she was explaining herself to this man she barely knew, but something about his presence made her want to keep talking. "In that case, may I help you with your shopping? Some of these flour sacks can be mighty heavy for a lady." The offer was simple, but it had been so long since anyone had offered Willow help without obligation or pity that she found herself accepting. They moved through the store together, Vic carrying the heavier items, making occasional comments that drew reluctant smiles from Willow. When they finished, he insisted on loading her purchases onto her horse. "Would you like some company on your ride back?" he asked. "I'm headed that way myself," cautioned Ward, with longing inside Willow. "I don't think my brother would approve." Vic nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Another time, perhaps. Though I should warn you, Miss Carter, I'm not easily discouraged." Something about his teasing tone, so free of judgment, made Willow brave. "Then perhaps I shall see you again, Mr. Xavier." His smile widened. "Count on it." As Willow rode home, she felt lighter than she had in years, even as guilt nagged at her for enjoying a man's company against her brother's wishes. But the memory of Vic's smile sustained her through Grant's interrogation about her trip to town and Martha's complaints about the quality of the sugar she'd brought back. Over the next 2 weeks, Willow found herself riding to town for supplies more often than strictly necessary. Sometimes Vic would be there, sometimes not, but when their paths did cross, those moments became precious treasures she hoarded like a miser. During one such encounter, they walked together toward the edge of town, where fewer people could observe them. "Why do you always wear long sleeves in this heat?" Vic asked suddenly. "Even the oldest ladies in town have their arms bare by midday." Willow stiffened. I prefer it this way." Vic studied her face. "I don't mean to pry, but it seems like there's something you're hiding." "Maybe there is," she replied, her voice barely audible. "Something ugly." "I doubt that very much," he said gently. "There's nothing about you that could be ugly, Willow Carter." His words brought unexpected tears to her eyes, and she turned away quickly. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Then tell me," he urged. "I want to understand." But Willow shook her head. "I should go. Grant will be expecting me." As July turned to August, the heat grew even more oppressive, and with it, tensions in the Carter household. Martha's pregnancy was making her increasingly irritable, and Grant's temper flared more frequently. One evening, as Willow prepared dinner, the sleeve of her dress caught on a pot handle, pulling it up to reveal her scarred forearm just as Martha entered the kitchen. Martha gasped. "Cover that up. I'm eating in there." Grant appeared in the doorway, his face darkening at the sight of Willow's exposed arm. "For God's sake, Willow. Must you flaunt your deformity?" "I wasn't flaunting anything," Willow protested, tugging her sleeve down. "It was an accident." "Everything with you is an accident," Grant sneered. "The fire, coming back here to burden us, and now I hear you've been spending time with that Xavier fellow in town." Willow's heart sank. "We've only spoken a few times." "A few times too many. Do you think he'd want anything to do with you if he saw those marks?" "Men like him want pretty things, Willow, not damaged ones." "Grant, please," Willow whispered, fighting tears. "He's right," Martha interjected. "You should be grateful anyone talks to you at all, looking like that. My sister had a burn on her hand half the size of yours, and her husband couldn't stand to touch it." Something inside Willow snapped. 3 years of shame, of hiding, of apologizing for surviving it all boiled over in a moment of rare defiance. "These scars mean I lived," she said, her voice shaking. "When everything was burning around me, I fought to get out. I'm sorry they disgust you, but I won't apologize for surviving." Grant's face contorted with anger. "You always were selfish. If you'd gotten to our parents faster instead of saving yourself, that's enough." Willow cried. "I was 16. I tried to reach them, but the roof collapsed." "You weren't there, Grant. You don't know what it was like." "Get out," Grant said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Get out of this kitchen until you remember your place." Willow fled to her small room, hands trembling with anger and hurt. For the first time, she allowed herself to acknowledge the truth. This house would never be home. Grant would never see beyond her scars to the sister who needed his love and acceptance. That night, Willow made a decision. She would no longer hide who she was or what had happened to her. If the world couldn't accept her scars, that was the world's problem, not hers. The next morning, she rode into town wearing a dress with shorter sleeves that revealed the edges of her scarred skin. People stared, some with pity, others with disgust, but Willow held her head high. She was tying her horse outside the general store when she heard Vic call her name. Turning, she saw him approaching, his familiar smile fading as his gaze fell to her exposed arms. Willow's confidence wavered, but she stood her ground. "Good morning, Vic." He moved closer, his eyes now fixed on her face. "Willow," he said softly, "you look different today." "I decided to stop hiding," she replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. To her surprise, Vic smiled again. "It suits you. Freedom always does." Before she could respond, a voice called out, "Well, if it isn't the scarred Carter girl. Heard about you, but hadn't seen the damage up close." A group of young men had gathered nearby, one of them nudging another and pointing at Willow's arms. Humiliation washed over her, and she reached instinctively to cover herself. Vic stepped forward, positioning himself between Willow and the men. "You gentlemen have business here?" he asked, his tone deceptively calm. "Just admiring the view," one replied with a smirk. "Though some views are prettier than others. Wouldn't you say, Xavier?" Willow saw Vic's shoulders tense. "I'd say a man who judges a lady by anything other than her character isn't much of a man at all." The leader of the group stepped forward. "Come on, Xavier. Even you can't pretend those scars aren't unsightly." "The only unsightly thing I see is your lack of manners," Vic replied coldly. "Now move along before I decide to teach you some." The men hesitated, clearly weighing whether Vic's reputation made this confrontation worth pursuing. Finally, with muttered curses, they walked away. Willow stood frozen, embarrassment and gratitude warring within her. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Vic said, turning to face her. His eyes were fierce with an emotion she couldn't name. "Willow, would you walk with me? Somewhere more private." She nodded, and he led her toward a small church garden at the end of the street, secluded by tall hedges. Once they were alone, Vic faced her, his expression serious. "How did it happen?" he asked gently. Willow took a deep breath. "There was a fire. 3 years ago. Our farmhouse burned down with my parents inside. I tried to save them, but—" Her voice caught. "I couldn't reach them. The flames caught my nightdress. I rolled on the ground to put them out, but by then you were already burned," Vic finished for her. She nodded. "Grant was in Denver at the time. When he came back, he sent me to our aunt in Boston. He said it was for the best, that I needed proper care. But I think he couldn't bear to look at me. I reminded him that he wasn't there when our parents died. And your aunt. She meant well, I suppose. She kept me hidden away, told me no man would want a wife with scars like mine. When she died, Grant had no choice but to take me in."
Vic Xavier.
"He had a choice in how he treated you, though. He blames me," Willow said simply, "for surviving when our parents didn't. That's not fair." "No," she agreed, "but it's how he feels." They stood in silence for a moment, the summer breeze rustling the leaves around them. Then, with deliberate slowness, Vic reached for her scarred arm. Willow instinctively pulled back. "May I?" he asked, his voice gentle. Heart pounding, Willow extended her arm. Vic's fingers were calloused, but tender as they traced the path of the scars that ran from her wrist up past her elbow. "Does it still hurt?" he asked. "Not the scars themselves," she admitted. "Just the memory of how they came to be. And the way people look at them." "The way I'm looking at them?" Willow met his gaze, searching for disgust or pity, but finding neither. "How are you looking at them, Vic?" "Like they're part of a woman who's braver than anyone gives her credit for," he replied. "A woman who survived something terrible and still finds the courage to smile." Tears pricked at Willow's eyes. Most people don't see it that way. Most people are fools, Vic said simply. Then, before she could respond, he raised her arm to his lips and placed a gentle kiss on the worst of the scarring. Willow gasped, not from pain but from the shocking tenderness of the gesture. "These marks are beautiful to me," Vic said, his voice husky with emotion. "They tell me you're a fighter, Willow Carter. They tell me you don't give up." A sob escaped her throat, years of shame breaking free in that moment of acceptance. Vic pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried, his hand gently stroking her hair. "I've wanted to do that since the first day I saw you," he confessed when her tears subsided. "Not make you cry," he added with a small smile, "but hold you, talk to you without your brother glaring at me." Willow gave a watery laugh. "He says you're a troublemaker." "He's not entirely wrong," Vic admitted. "I've been known to speak my mind when I should hold my tongue. But I've never been fired for cause, despite what people say. I left those other ranches because the owners wanted me to handle horses in ways I didn't agree with. And Mr. Harrison treats his animals right, and his people too." Vic's hand moved to gently cup her cheek. "Willow, I'd like to call on you properly. With your brother's permission if possible, without it if necessary." Willow's heart soared, then plummeted. Grant would never allow it. "Then we'll find another way," Vic said with determination. "I'm not giving up on you, Willow Carter. Not when I've finally found you." The sound of approaching footsteps forced them apart. A woman from the church appeared, eyebrows raising at finding them alone together. "I should get home," Willow said reluctantly. "Grant will be wondering where I am." "Meet me tomorrow," Vic urged, "by the creek that runs behind your brother's property. No one will see us there." Willow knew she should refuse, that sneaking around would only confirm her brother's worst assumptions about Vic. But the memory of his kiss upon her scars, his words of acceptance, overrode her caution. "Noon," she agreed. "I can get away while they're eating dinner." Vic's smile was radiant. "I'll be there." Willow rode home with her heart lighter than it had been in years, despite knowing the storm that would await her. As expected, Grant was furious when he saw her shortened sleeves and the deliberate exposure of her scars. "Have you lost your mind?" he demanded. "Parading around town like that, embarrassing this family?" "I'm not embarrassed," Willow replied, the newfound strength in her voice surprising even herself. "And I won't hide any more, Grant. You live under my roof. Then perhaps I should find another," Willow interrupted, shocking them both with her boldness. Grant's face reddened. "And where would you go? Who would take you in?" "I'll figure something out," she said, though uncertainty gnawed at her. "But I won't live where I'm made to feel ashamed for surviving." Martha entered the room, her eyes widening at the tension. "What's happening?" "Your sister-in-law has decided she's too good for hospitality," Grant said coldly. "Thinks she can make her own way in the world." Martha looked between them, then surprised Willow by saying, "Perhaps we've been too harsh, Grant. She's your sister, after all." Grant's jaw tightened. "She hasn't been my sister since she chose herself over our parents." The word struck Willow like a physical blow. "Is that what you think happened? That I chose to save myself? What else am I supposed to think? You got out. They didn't." "I tried," Willow cried. "I was reaching for Mother's hand when the beam fell. It pinned me down, caught my nightdress on fire. Father pushed me out the window before the roof collapsed on them both. His last act was to save me, Grant. And you've made me feel guilty for it every day since." Grant stared at her, shock registering in his features. "Father pushed you out?" "Yes," Willow whispered. "He chose to save me. I didn't choose to save myself." The revelation hung in the air between them, years of misplaced blame suddenly thrown into question. For the first time since the fire, Grant looked at Willow, really looked at her, and seemed to see past the scars to the sister who had been carrying her own guilt and grief. "I didn't know," he said finally, his voice subdued. "You never asked," Willow replied. You just assumed the worst of me. Martha moved to her husband's side, placing a hand on his arm. Grant, perhaps it's time to let go of this anger. It's not good for anyone, least of all the baby coming. Grant's shoulders sagged. I need time to think. He left the room without another word, leaving Willow and Martha in an uncomfortable silence. He loved our parents very much, Martha said after a moment. When he heard about the fire, something broke in him. I loved them too, Willow said softly. And I lost them and my brother in the same night. Martha had the grace to look ashamed. I'm sorry for how we've treated you. I followed Grant's lead, but that's no excuse. The unexpected apology left Willow speechless. She managed a nod before retreating to her room, emotionally exhausted from the day's events. The next morning, Grant was notably absent from breakfast, having left early for the fields. Martha was quieter than usual, offering Willow more food without the usual comments about conserving supplies. As noon approached, Willow made her excuse about needing fresh air and slipped away to the creek behind the property. Her heart raced as she spotted Vic already waiting, sitting on a fallen log with his hat beside him. He stood as she approached, his face lighting up. You came. Of course I came, she replied, realizing how true it was. Nothing could have kept her away. I brought something for you, Vic said, reaching into his saddlebag. He pulled out a small box tied with a simple ribbon. It's not much, but... Willow opened it to find a delicate silver chain with a small pendant shaped like a phoenix. Vic, it's beautiful. The lady at the jewelry store said the phoenix rises from ashes, he explained, suddenly looking boyish and uncertain. It made me think of you, rising above what happened, becoming something new and strong. Touched beyond words, Willow held out the necklace. Will you put it on me? Vic moved behind her, his fingers brushing against her neck as he fastened the clasp. The simple touch sent shivers down her spine. There was a confrontation with my brother last night, she told him as they sat together on the log. I finally told him the truth about the fire. That our father saved me. How did he take it? I'm not sure. He needs time to process it, I think. But something changed. For the first time, he seemed to see me as his sister again, not just these. She gestured to her scars. That's a start, Vic said. Though I'll admit, I was prepared to steal you away, if necessary. His tone was light, but his eyes were serious. Were you now? Willow asked, warmth spreading through her chest. I've never met anyone like you, Willow Carter, Vic said, taking her hand. Most people in this world are just getting by, doing what's expected. But you've faced the worst and come through it with this light inside you. I saw it the moment we met, even when you were trying to hide. What light? She asked, genuinely puzzled. The kind that makes a man want to be better. The kind that feels like home. He reached up to touch her cheek. I know it's fast. We've only known each other a few weeks. But I think I'm falling in love with you. Willow's breath caught. Beak. You don't have to say anything, he assured her quickly. I just wanted you to know. Whatever happens with your brother, whatever you decide to do, I'm here. I want to be part of your life, if you'll let me. Instead of answering with words, Willow leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, then bloomed into something warm and certain. When they finally parted, both were smiling. I'll take that as a maybe, Vic teased, earning a laugh from Willow. They spent the afternoon by the creek, talking about everything and nothing, his childhood on a farm in Kansas, her brief time in Boston, their dreams for the future. When the sun began to dip in the sky, Willow reluctantly admitted she needed to return before she was missed. May I call on you tomorrow? Vic asked as they walked back toward the edge of the property. Properly this time. I'd like to speak with your brother. Willow hesitated. Give me a few more days with him. I think he's coming around, but pushing too fast might set us back. As you wish, Vic agreed, though she could see his impatience. But remember, if things go badly, my offer to steal you away stands." She laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "I'll keep that in mind, Mr. Xavier." He kissed her once more before they parted, a promise in the gentle press of his lips. As Willow approached the house, she was startled to see Grant sitting on the porch steps, waiting. Her steps faltered, but she continued forward, chin lifted. "I saw you with him," Grant said without preamble. Willow's heart sank. "I can explain, no need," Grant interrupted, surprising her. "I followed you to the creek, heard some of what was said." His expression was unreadable. "He seems to care for you." "He does," Willow confirmed, watching her brother carefully. "And I care for him." Grant nodded slowly. "I've been unfair to you, Willow. These past 3 years, and especially since you returned." He looked down at his hands. "I couldn't bear to look at your scars because they reminded me I wasn't there when our family needed me." "Grant, no, let me finish. I blamed you because it was easier than blaming myself. When you said father pushed you out the window." His voice caught. That sounds like him. Always putting others first. Tears pricked at Willow's eyes. He would have saved them too if he could. "I know that now." Grant looked up at her, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "I can't change how I've treated you, but I can try to do better, starting now." "That's all I've ever wanted," Willow said softly. "To be your sister again." Grant stood, awkwardly holding out his arms. Willow stepped into her brother's embrace for the first time in 3 years, feeling a piece of her heart mend as his arms closed around her. "Xavier can call tomorrow," Grant said gruffly as they separated. "If he's serious about his intentions." Willow couldn't contain her smile. "He is. Very serious." The next day, Vic arrived at the Carter homestead dressed in his best clothes, hat in hand. Grant met him on the porch, and though Willow couldn't hear their conversation from where Martha had insisted she wait inside, she could see it was cordial, if not warm. When Grant finally invited Vic inside, his expression was resigned but not hostile. "He wants to court you properly," he told Willow. "Says he's prepared to prove his worth." "And what did you say?" Willow asked, hardly daring to hope. "I said he could try," Grant replied with the ghost of a smile. "But that my sister sets a high standard." Over the weeks that followed, Vic became a regular visitor at the Carter home. Grant gradually warmed to him as he saw the way Vic treated Willow with respect, admiration, and an acceptance that extended to every part of her, scars included. By the time autumn painted the Colorado landscape in golds and reds, Willow no longer hid her scars in public. There were still stares, still whispers, but they mattered less and less. What mattered was the family she was rebuilding with Grant and Martha, whose son was born in early October. What mattered was Vic, whose love gave her the courage to face each day without shame. On a crisp November evening, with the first snow threatening in the dark clouds overhead, Vic took Willow to the creek where they had shared their first kiss. He dropped to one knee in the fallen leaves, a simple ring in his hand. "I told you once that your scars were beautiful to me," he said, his blue eyes earnest in the fading light. "But the truth is, everything about you is beautiful, Willow Carter. Your strength, your kindness, the way you love despite everything you've endured. I want to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Willow answered without hesitation. 1,000 times yes. They were married on Christmas Day in the small church in Carson Creek. Willow wore a dress with short sleeves that displayed her scars proudly, like badges of survival. Grant walked her down the aisle, his nephew in his arms, his face showing only pride as he gave his sister away. As Vic slipped the ring onto her finger and sealed their vows with a kiss, Willow knew she had found what she'd been seeking all along, not someone who would overlook her scars, but someone who would see the beauty in them. Someone who would love her not despite her past, but because of how it had shaped her into the woman she had become. And in that love, Willow finally found her way home.